Rebecca Solnit, younger feminists have shifted my understanding. It's a myth that wisdom comes only with age, the writer argues. Young women and girls offer new tools to use. Rebecca Solnit, Saturday the 29th of February 2020, 10:00 GMT. Share on Facebook, share on Twitter, share via email. As you grow older, you become an immigrant from a vanished country, a country some of your peers may remember but the young may find unimaginable or incomprehensible. You could call it the land of before some great change, before we did things this way, before we decided that was unacceptable, before we shed new light on an old problem. I was shaped by a world that no longer quite exists, so I can't imagine myself at, say, 18 in the present moment, because to do so is to imagine someone utterly different. She does not exist, and I, as we all do, exist as the cumulative effect of my experiences, opportunities or lack thereof, and ideals. So much of what shaped and scarred my younger self, and made me a solitary feminist, and then much later one among many, was the unspeakability of violence against women and all the denigration, harassment and silencing that went with it. It was epidemic, and yet every incident was supposed to be an isolated incident, and nobody was supposed to connect the crimes to the culture that relished violence against women as entertainment, and denied it existed in any significant way as fact, and made sure that prevention and prosecution were as feeble as they were rare. All those forces still exist, but something else does alongside them, a vigorous conversation, speaking and naming and describing and defining, rejecting the excuses and cover-ups and justifications. That conversation is exhilarating for me. It's also a conundrum in that I have spent much of the past dozen years reading horrific stories of rape, torture, murder, stalking and domestic violence in the news, and hearing them directly from survivors. I have been both exhilarated to see change come, although not enough, and exhausted by this immersion in, mostly, male violence and, mostly, female annihilation. But we have at least diagnosed the problem. Conversations about generational divides try to set up feminism as a catfight, because people like it when ladies fight. There is number 18-year-old me, but there are plenty of 18-year-olds to show me how much has changed, and to promise through the beautiful insubordination and high expectations that more is going to change. Last year, when a young woman I know shared an essay she wrote about accompanying her friend through the all-night ordeal of getting a rape kit from a hospital, I was amazed to see how truths and stances that were so hard-won for many of us were built into her worldview. She had this new equipment, and seemed never to have had the self-doubt that undermines people's ability to recognize what just happened, that old voice saying, "You're overreacting," which is another way to say, "You're having the wrong feelings," which really means, your feelings are inconvenient for others, so strangle them at birth. Decades ago, I came across an aphorism that said, more or less, remember the respect due to youth. One of the pernicious myths of our time is that wisdom accumulates with age in some steady, standard way, like tree rings. In this scheme, the old have it and the young lack it, and should open their little beaks and wait for a worm of wisdom to be dropped in. Told this way, wisdom is also the result of individual development, rather than of how we as a society become better at seeing something, smarter about knowing how something works. I think that conversations about generational divides miss the point, and are all too common in the attempt to set up feminism as a generational catfight, because people like it when ladies fight. This culture doesn't know how to tell stories that don't pit groups against each other in some warlike drama of scarcity and selfishness. I admire and am grateful to the younger feminists at work, and learn a lot from them, not any one big truth but a host of insights that have gradually shifted my understanding, and given me new tools to use. What I find in so many young women and girls, right down to toddlers in my family, as well as that young woman taking her friend to get the rape kit, is a clarity and confidence about their rights, needs, and truths that feels new and different. We can credit an older generation with sowing some of the seeds, but they are the beautiful harvest. They are the victory made by Muhammad Nadim.